This is Sales Management Mastery, Episode 5.
Welcome to Sales Management Mastery, where you get an insider's look on how to build, motivate, coach, and lead a high-performance, low-maintenance sales team. Here's your host, Ralph Burns.
Hello and welcome to Sales Management Mastery online at salesmanagementmastery.com, and we're here to help you and your sales managers build a team of highly motivated, elite salespeople using easy-to-use, real-world sales management techniques and tactics that'll unleash a flood of new sales for your sales organization. On this episode of Sales Management Mastery, we're going to give you the lazy sales manager's way to coach salespeople, as well as our best technique to make the best use of your time by becoming a sales coach and not a sales king. I'd like to remind you that if you'd like to get a jump start on creating your own team of supercharged salespeople using our proven system, you can claim your free test drive of the Sales Management Mastery Academy by going to salestraininggift.com. A couple years back, when I took over a sales team, I was hired as a sales manager, and before I left the corporate world and started to train sales managers full time, I was a sales manager at a couple of different Fortune 500 and NASDAQ 100 and some smaller organizations as well, and I did that for many, many years. But one of the organizations that I started with, this is, going back 8 or 9 years now, it was an organization that I really wanted to be a part of because they had just an excellent record and just a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I got a position with them as a sales manager, not starting off as a sales rep. And I took over a team which was, I've taken over a couple of different teams where they were really not doing very good and unfortunately had not really had the type of leadership and a number of different positions. I sort of actually enjoy that more than anything, sort of to problem solve and to figure out how best to motivate, lead, and coach and ultimately turn around sales teams, which is what I've done a couple of times. But a few years back, I took over this one team that the district that was there. It was about 10 or 15 sales reps, and none of the members of the sales team could solve any of their problems. And they weren't empowered to solve any of their problems because their previous boss hadn't allowed them to solve any of their own problems. So he became sort of this toll booth in which all things and all decisions must pass. And so there was really no support mechanism set up to really sort of help alleviate this burden of all these sales-related issues as well. So I came into a situation where it was absolute nightmare. And my first month, on average, I probably got, I remember one day I looked at my, I had a Palm, smartphone, and I looked at it, and I looked at how many incoming calls I had that day, and it was like 57 incoming calls. It was just insane. And they started at like 7 o'clock in the morning and ended at about 7 o'clock at night. So, and that was just the incoming ones. And I actually had a bunch of outgoing calls. And I think I measured one day I had 103 calls that I actually made during that day. So after my first couple of weeks on the job, I realized that something just absolutely had to change. I was going out of my mind. And I started thinking of ways and techniques that I could maybe use in order to get my sales reps to start solving their own problems, but also improve my own life, because I wasn't doing anything but helping solve their problems all day long. So I figured out this way to do it, and which we're going to talk about here in just a couple of moments. But I noticed that there was a strange side effect when we started to use this technique, and this is what we call the lazy man's way to coach your salespeople. And it's really true, because it not only is it the lazy man's way, but it's also a very effective way because it does something as well. It also improves morale. And the reason why, and we'll get into this in just a second, is because people who feel like they're in control and not being controlled by an outside force feel better about what they're doing, and their morale increases. I mean, if you think about how you feel when you solve kind of your own problems, you feel sort of empowered by that. You might, whether it's, you're fixing the sink or you're figuring out some complex sales issue. If you figure it out yourself and you say, hey, you kind of feel good about that. You pat yourself on the back and you think, I did that on my own. And that's really what you want your salespeople to feel when they have individual issues. So, to be able to say that I figured that out for myself is a pretty nice thing. So salespeople are really no different. So anyway, so out of that sort of extreme pain and anguish in those couple of weeks in this new position, I started to realize that the goal should not be to create dependence, a bunch of dependents, but to create a bunch of independent people that are interdependent on each other, but not dependent on me. And of course, there's always going to be these difficult dilemmas that confront salespeople and that your sales managers deal with their salespeople that require your advice and your control. There's no question about that. But the majority of the calls that a sales manager receives on a daily basis are probably pretty routine in nature and can be solved fairly easily, and they don't really require the sales manager's assistance. So what I'm saying here is that what I kind of came into was I was more of an enabler. I was solving people's problems all day long to the tune of 50 incoming calls and 100 plus on the really bad days, total calls with outgoing and incoming. I couldn't get anything done. So the more that you answer the questions of the sales reps, and for most of the incoming calls that I had were just basic sales-related questions, the more they became sort of dependent upon me. And I realized that the more I solved their problems, the more they wanted to call me because they say, hey, this guy's actually effective. He's going to help me. I'm kind of throwing that monkey off my back and I'm going to throw it on his back. But the problem is that creates this dependency, and you don't want to create dependency. You want to create independence. And here's an interesting thing is that, and I read this when I was doing some of my research on it before I started using this technique, is that people's happiness is in direct proportion to how many things in their life are within their control. And I think you could probably agree with this because it's the basic human nature concept that we want to use to our advantage here. And if you keep the answering of your salespeople's questions in their hands, you enhance their happiness and yours as well. Obviously, you have less to do, but you're empowering them because they feel more in control of their own destiny. They're solving their own problems. So think about it. I mean, when are you probably the most frustrated? I mean, chances for me is that it's when something happens to you that you have little or no control over. And control is that common denominator to many frustrating events. And let's just think about, maybe the last time you were stuck in traffic. Maybe you're riding in traffic right now as you listen to this. But not only are you frustrated that you might be late to your appointment and that you don't have control over the speed in which you're driving, but you are very frustrated because you don't have control. But the more you feel in control of your destiny, the less frustration you feel and the happier that you are at any given point in time. And oftentimes when I'm stuck in traffic, just to feel like I'm in control, I'll get off the highway and just start driving, and at least I'm moving and I feel like I'm in control. Even though if I probably stayed on the highway, I'd probably go just as slow and get to my destination in the same amount of time. But the point is that you feel like you're in control. So anyways, you want to use this sort of basic human nature concept in motivating and leading and coaching your salespeople as well. So how do you do this? What technique did I learn when I was just absolutely miserable in this position that I just described for you a couple of minutes ago? So it's a two-step process. First off, let's say your salesperson or your sales manager's salespeople are calling him or her on a regular basis with sort of basic problems, the same problems that they always kind of come to them with. And the first thing you do is this: first off, you confirm that the problem actually is a problem. And a true problem only exists if there's the difference between what the salesperson wants to happen and what actually is happening. So if the salesperson can't tell you what they'd like to have happening, then they really don't have a problem. They're just really just